All right. Hello, everybody. It's exciting to have you all here on this sunny morning here in July here in Southern California. I'm so excited to have my guest, Beth Bollinger. We're going to talk about a ton of stuff today, all about diabetes, which, is something that eh, in a previous life, learned a lot about. And then suddenly it became much more real for me personally. But thank you all for showing up. Oh my gosh, look at all these folks. Donna, Sherry, Belinda, so great to see you. Um, wow. It's awesome that there's so many people here. Beth, how are things going over there? How are you this morning?
I am good. I'm in Oak Harbor with my daughter and our new baby, and it's sunny, and I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. This is not going to be a lecture on diabetes, folks.
No.
Okay. Don't worry. We're not here to tell you all about, Enlightened Omnivore is all about understanding our food, how it's made, and why that's important. And the most important part of it is that food is medicine, it's nutrition, it's our fuel, but um it's also our life force. And the thing that I'm really excited about is that food what we talk about in terms of feelings and emotions around food, well, there's also a bunch of science. And talking about the nutrition of food is so interesting for me. So this conversation is really about curiosity and exploring some very personal things that happened to me in the last couple of years that I've written about in my Worlds Collide series, but also some of the amazing new things we've learned in the space of nutrition that affect blood sugar, glucose, metabolic health, all these things that we're all wrestling with at whatever age or whatever life stage we're in. And then we're going to talk a little bit about technology too, because back in the days, I used to be in the healthcare PR space, and I actually worked with some of the leading medical technology companies in diabetes. And so I'm excited about that. But I couldn't think of a better person to ask to join me today to help make sense of all of this stuff from that nutritional side, from the food side, from the healthy living side. So I want to introduce again Beth Bollinger. Thank you so much for joining, Beth.
Well, thank you for having me.
So tell us a little bit about your story and what you do and what Nest Wellness is all about.
So, gosh, I guess Nest Wellness is just about, I feel like I'm the bridge between the doctors and the science and the how to. Um, I have a background in design and a love for graphics and food photography. And so I use that to teach people. So that's basically my love.
Fantastic. And Beth, your health journey started well before all of the amazing work you do online. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got into exploring health and wellness?
Yeah. So at uh, at 23, I had sort of unexplained chest pain and went through all of the testing and the doctors and the diagnostics, and nobody ever really could figure out why. And it wasn't until I was 35 and my husband had finished medical school and we moved to a small town. And there was a doctor in this small town whose sister in law had this same thing. And it's a mitral valve prolapse syndrome. And it's a benign heart condition, but it causes chest pain in some people. So I did a deep dive. And one of the things that people suggested was to cut out sugar. So at 35, I cut out refined sugar from my diet. And I was chest pain free since, for a long, since, for the first time in a long time. So that was really the first thing that sort of piqued my interest in what you consume and how the way you feel. So um, that was kind of the start for me.
And then your family has a medical background. I think your husband's a physician, but you weren't. You really went back to school later, right?
I
After.
did. I did. So I was managing my husband's medical practice, and he was counseling patients on nutrition and lifestyle every day. And so I saw that need. We actually hired a nutritionist. He's an orthopedic surgeon, and so we actually had a nutritionist in our office. And well, I want to do that piece. I want to be more patient facing. And so I studied at night. We have 4 kids, and so I managed the medical practice during the day, studied at night. And so that's kind of how it started.
Yeah, and I'm curious, like, when you started to realize how much food was impacting your life, your health,
Mhm,
we
mhm,
think of food is like, okay, calories in, calories out, and sure, people have allergies or sensitivity,
mhm.
and there are major illnesses like celiac and things like that, but
Sure.
the fact that you could modulate something like chest pain,
Yeah,
with
yeah.
food, I mean, how did that change your outlook on medicine or on your health?
Uh, it was very profound. And then I realized maybe about 6 well, I guess about 12 or 14 years ago that refined grain is basically sugar. You eat refined grain, and so it acts like sugar. So, same thing, I would get chest pain with refined grain. So, I realized at a certain point that refined grain was not doing me any favors, and it was basically uh, a shot of sugar to my system. So, at that point, is when we started also eating refined grain free. Um, and then about
How
5
would you
years ago,
grain sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt,
no,
but
go
just
ahead.
how would you define refined grain for folks who don't know what
So
that
refined grain would be, most commercially bought breads and pastas and cookies and cakes and, um, that kind
is? Is like all-purpose flour if you're making it your
all-purpose flour is refined grain. Yeah,
yes,
exactly.
you don't want any of that. So we're talking really whole grains like rice or barley or bulgur or something that's more,
Mhm.
higher in that fiber. Is
Iron
that
fiber, less processed.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and we're gonna talk all about this because the exciting thing, for me when I, learned that I had basically a pre-diabetes diagnosis,
yeah.
as the physician called it, I really went down a rabbit hole of trying to
Mm,
understand how these foods affected my metabolic health because
mhm,
and basically what we mean by that is your blood sugar, your body's response to how it converts the food we eat into fuel, into
mhm,
energy for us, right? And that's glucose. And so some people call it blood sugar, some people call
mhm.
it glucose. I don't know. What would you say, Beth? How do you explain it to folks?
Yeah, I mean, you eat something that's, like added sugar, refined grain, things devoid of fiber and most nutrients, and that's gonna spike your blood sugar faster.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh.
and all kinds of, physical responses to your blood sugar changing speed, they call that the velocity, uh,
Mhm,
or a high blood sugar, which is a hyperglycemia, or a low blood sugar, which is hypoglycemia.
mhm,
Medical terms, really, in general, all it means is the percentage of glucose in your blood,
mhm,
the speed with which your body produces this other hormone called insulin, which
mhm.
basically turns that glucose into energy that you can metabolize and use in your body. Um, yeah, so my story with specifically with diabetes and why I wanted Beth to come on was like we have this crazy connection of the fact that when I grew up, my grandfather had type 2 diabetes,
Mm,
sit at the counter with him when I visited, and ate, a bowl of super high sugar, corn pops or something, and watch him test his blood sugar. And this was back in the
mhm.
day they even had the meters,
Yeah,
these test strips.
right.
You would put some blood on it and wait a few, minutes and then compare it to the meter on the back, just a bunch of color swabs basically.
Wow.
And that's how he told, red was bad, green was good, yellow was caution.
Huh.
Uh, and that's how he started his day every day. And I would be anxious about it because I would want to know if grandpa was going to get the green light, in the morning.
Yeah.
And that was, my first exploration with it. Then, you know, everyone in my family has some kind of metabolic or endocrinological issue.
Mm,
And diabetes runs strong through my heritage. So I've had to be really sensitive to it. And
Mm,
then randomly, when I got into healthcare PR, which was my first job, really, or my second job out of college, I started working in all different medical fields, but
mm,
gravitated towards diabetes, because it was familiar to me, and then got a job here in California with the leading medical technology company. They're called Medtronic, and they were making, an insulin pump that was helping type 1s. And
mm,
so there's all these kind of connections in diabetes for me where I read every clinical trial. I'd worn some of the devices that we're going to talk about today. I had a familiarity, but I didn't really think it was going to affect me. I thought that I would, I knew in the background that there was a risk, but I kind of was blinders on. And then just 2 years ago, my, went for my physical, and my doctor said, "Hey, back in 2013, your A1C was 5.1, and
mm,
A1C is the average blood sugar over 3 months."
sure.
Almost everybody gets that in there now, especially at my age, in your panel, in your blood panel. And so he could look back and he's like, okay, it was 5.1, which is actually normal, pretty much, maybe a little bit higher than the on the average. And he's like, and it's 5.6 right now. We're seeing a progression over the last decade. It's kind of going up and going up and going up. And he's like, 5.8 is pre-diabetes and 6 is diabetes, and, so you're on your way, and
Mhm,
that really had a huge impact on me. So, you've said before, Beth, oh, and by the way, I wanna make sure everybody who's listening in, and we've got a ton of folks on today, this is so exciting, please feel free to throw your questions or comments in the chat, in the message bar, and we'll be answering questions throughout the conversation today. Here with Beth Bollinger of Nest Wellness. For those of you who just come on, and so excited to be talking about metabolic health, talk about my experience with prediabetes, and then all the foods and some of the technology that might help us better manage our metabolic health. So, you often say that glucose, we've been talking about this blood sugar and glucose, is really a window into the body rather than the whole story.
mhm,
I'm
mhm.
I'm curious. I think I know what you mean, but share with us what that means to you.
What that means to me, I feel like it is a way for people to take control of their health. It's an easy, monitorable way to keep an eye on what's happening inside your body. And I think I told you earlier that I feel like I wish that all insurance companies would pay for people to use a continuous glucose biosensor for a month a year. And I think it is such valuable information that so people can see what's happening inside their bodies, whether that's food they eat, stress, sleep, movement, to see how all of that affects blood sugar is really powerful.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you mentioned continuous glucose monitors, or bloods, or a biosensor. Uh,
Mhm.
this is the technology I was talking about that
Yeah.
when I was in the field was like early, but now, and it was only by prescription or on special
Mhm.
experimentation. But now it's over the counter, which
Mhm.
when I heard from my doctor that I might be having issues or getting
Mhm.
to becoming pre-diabetic, I wanted to know that information. I wanted to have some data. You can't
Mhm.
see your glucose, and
Right.
sometimes you can't feel. In fact, most
Mhm.
you can't feel
Right.
anything changing, or you don't realize that the feeling you're having. Maybe you get a little sweaty after a meal, or you
Yeah.
feel brain fog, or
Or
those
that 3
things.
PM crash
What is it called?
or that 3 PM crash, people don't often connect that with a blood sugar issue.
Yeah, yeah. And so our body is constantly modulating
Mhm.
this level of glucose, and we can't see it. And so the really cool thing was one of these things, the
Mhm.
CGM. which this is actually the applicator for one of the manufacturers. Um, I'm you can see inside the little sensor. In fact, I'm gonna ask Beth if she wouldn't mind showing off her gun
Uh,
because she's got one. There it is. So that's the sensor that comes with, and basically it's just it goes just under your skin, right?
mhm, mhm,
And then it transmits information to your phone,
right.
and so you can see it. You just take this, you just push this button, and
Mhm,
it injects a small needle. It
mhm,
it's more nerve wracking, I think, mentally for me than it hurts.
mhm. It makes
Really,
a loud noise, which can be can be scary, but it doesn't hurt.
yeah, and then it sends data, and so
Mhm.
I don't know. Can you tell us a little bit about how you use yours? Because you're wearing one now.
I'm wearing one now, and I wear one pretty often because I'm creating recipes and I'm testing them to make sure they create a level glucose response because uh, people with diabetes or prediabetes rely on that data to make sure that they can eat something safely, I guess, and not spike their blood sugar. So when I'm creating a recipe, I make sure that they have a nice combination of fat, fiber, and protein. So it elicits a fairly level glucose response. I am almost 60. So if I can get, a level glucose response, certainly someone younger with more muscle mass will be able to get as good or better glucose response. I like to stay under a 30-point rise, meaning something that I create doesn't create a bigger than 30-point rise in glucose.
And so I'm going to talk a little bit about what I experienced while wearing the sensor because
Yeah.
I actually don't wear the sensor anymore regularly. I wear it kind of once a quarter or twice a year, even. At the time when I got them the first time 2 years ago, I
Mhm,
wore them straight through for 4 months, and I wrote
mhm,
this in my Worlds Collide series, which I've just pulled out of the paywall, and there's a link in the notes and another link later on after this, after the recording, that you can kind of read the whole experience. But
mhm,
basically, I wore it and then tested all the
mhm.
different that I like to eat and saw what happened. It was fascinating for
Yeah.
me to get that picture, and also sometimes really surprising what foods
Mhm,
affected me. Um, but in terms of the technology, and there's a question here too, is it says, yes, okay, so yes, CGMs are an extraordinary valuable tool to tell a person what their body and their metabolism does with what they eat. Yes,
mhm,
absolutely. And that's what we're talking about right now. So thank you for that comment. It is like it is that window. It's kind of
mhm.
like literally, I don't know if you um could show on your phone kind of what it
Oh,
looks.
yeah,
But I'm not wearing one, I can't show it, but it's just an app, and you literally can see what your blood sugar is doing, and,
yeah. So this little spike here, this was 4 a.m. when the baby woke up, little stress spike. um, and then what do we have here? This is waking. This was a little yoga, and then that was my breakfast before we got on the call.
and that's the remarkable thing. You mentioned stress, like, how
Yeah.
does stress affect glucose? Because that was news to me.
Yeah. I mean, it's a spike in cortisol, and a spike in cortisol is going to show up in your glucose.
Yeah, there are so many hormones that our bodies are modulating, and
Mhm.
they have impact on
Mhm.
our metabolic health. I mean, I don't know if you my wife has been reading a lot about perimenopause right now, and
Mhm.
all
Mhm.
of it affects you
Oh, yeah.
in that period. So I can only imagine, but it's the same kind of thing. It's like this hormone that manages our nutritional, our fuel can be interrupted or impeded, or you can become more resistant to it or less resistant to the insulin
Mhm.
based on all of these other hormonal responses. So
Yeah.
fear, anxiety, stress, working out. And so, yeah, I'm, and it's not just eating. I think it's just
No.
really, really fascinating to me. And it's interesting, just an aside, like one of the things that when I first learned that was because when I was in the industry, a lot of people who type 1 uh, um, people with diabetes that have type 1, when they surgery, they have
Mm,
to go in and, it's and then the nurse has to manage their diabetes. Um,
sure.
when they were in this hospital setting and the stress of the surgery, like, their body did all these weird things, that,
Mm,
here they were controlling their diabetes just fine at home, and they go into that hospital setting, and just the surgery alone would have impact, how their body modulated glucose.
mhm,
So all kinds of things that can happen. When I wore it, well, there's a couple of different kinds too I want to talk about. This one is the Dexcom, if people are
mhm.
interested. There's also the Abbott Libre,
The Freestyle Libre. Mhm.
and then are there any others that you've used? Or I mean, those are kind of the two
Those are kind of the main 2.
that are
Yeah,
available over the counter, and I don't know what they're about 85 to $100, I think.
per month. Yeah,
Yeah, a month. So it's not a
that gives
cheap.
you 2. Yeah.
You get 2, and you wear them, 15 to 30 days?
Um, yeah, 10 to 14 days, I
10
think
to
is
14
good.
days,
Yeah.
10 to 14 days.
Mhm,
And so then you have to change them out,
mhm,
but then you get all that data on your phone, and you
mhm.
upload it to PDFs. You can during the day, you can actually mark, like, the events, right? So you can
Yeah,
say, like, "Oh,
exactly.
this is I'm eating," or, "This was the baby waking me up," or, "This is
Yeah.
I went on." So I went through that experience, and it was really fascinating because, there's a little show and tell from my own experience, and then I'd love your thoughts on
Okay.
what was happening. Um, the biggest thing that surprised me was actually fruit.
Yeah,
When I ate fruit, there's actually an alarm. You can set threshold settings on the device,
yes.
and it'll send you a text or a note if you go up high or go down low, and you can set those targets. And I would set off the alarm by eating an apple.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yet if I ate the same number of carbohydrates from a piece of pizza, I wouldn't get that response. So
Yeah,
can
it's
you tell us
interesting.
why you think?
Well, uh, I mean, with the pizza, it is refined grain, but you've got a big dose of fat and fiber with it. So that's likely what happened. Did you get a spike later with the pizza? Did it
What
start
I
out low?
Yeah, yeah, it wasn't as much a spike, it was a gradual up, and
Yeah.
then you'd get kind of to a threshold and then start to drop back down.
Or did it stay elevated for a good while?
Sometimes for almost an hour.
Yeah, yeah. And with the apple, was it straight up and down?
Yeah, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and it was back down to normal.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's
So
that fiber and the fat?
the fiber and the fat and the protein with the pizza. Yeah, yeah, is
Gotcha.
likely what but I think, I think in terms of I I call that sort of a tombstone spike, the one that goes up, stays elevated, and then finally goes down. I feel like I think those are more detrimental than the straight up and down spikes,
And why is that?
because it's more stress on the body, it's more, potentially inflammation, um, more stress on the body,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that makes sense because I mean, we wanna stay in healthy ranges.
Mhm,
And
mhm,
and so, some of us, like me, are just genetically predisposed. We've got
mhm,
lazy insulin or a lazy
mhm.
pancreas, and
Yeah,
so eat something with a bunch of sugar, even if it's as nutritious as an apple and has that,
yeah,
which is also something that can help, it shoots up, but it
yeah,
comes right back down.
comes
But
right back down.
yeah, then
So,
when I
I
eat.
don't want people to think, "Oh my gosh, I got a spike from this apple, so I shouldn't eat apples." I mean,
Right.
apples have fiber and nutrients, so, I mean, the way to handle that is if you get a spike from an apple, the next time, enjoy that apple with some cheese or a handful of nuts or some tahini, a source of, uh, fat and fiber, protein. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, yeah, so kind of what is that called? It's like naked carbs
Oh, no
versus
naked carbs, yeah.
is that a naked carb, the apple?
That would be a naked carb. Yeah,
Yeah, and then what's the opposite? Is it clothed carbs?
I guess.
We're gonna put on our metabolic parka with those, with
Yeah.
carbohydrates. But yeah, it's basically that makes so much sense that, we if we just pour straight sugar into something,
Mhm,
it makes sense that it's a very efficient burn, right? You're gonna
mhm,
use all those calories pretty quickly, and we've all
mhm,
probably experienced a sugar crash where
mhm.
you get all this energy, and then 30 minutes later you're depleted.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
Whereas, when I eat a very filling meal with lots of protein and lots of fat,
Mhm, mhm,
or it kind of like takes a while to even digest. So it
mhm.
makes to me that it would
Yeah.
take longer to process metabolically too.
And my
Right.
husband tells a story that, he would have for breakfast, like, a Pop-Tart and a glass of juice and maybe an instant breakfast, and he would be falling asleep on his desk in junior high or high school by 10 a.m. So he had special permission from his teacher to eat a Snickers at 10 a.m. So he was going from one sugar spike and crash to the next all day long. And I think a lot of people really don't connect that with the way they feel. It's pretty common to start our day with um, a high carb, high sugar breakfast. It's super common. So if people take away one thing, uh, it would be to start your day with protein.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And how do you get protein in the morning?
So I like either Greek yogurt or cottage cheese, and I add lots of nuts and seeds and berries to that for my fiber. Yeah.
And are you vegetarian or do
No,
you,
no,
d
I'm an omnivore. Yep.
what about eggs and meat in the morning? Is that
Yeah.
recommended?
Yeah, that's great. Eat it with a side of veggies. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I do every morning because I shifted to a much higher protein diet
Yeah.
a year ago, and spoiler alert, that's been probably the biggest improvement for me from a glycemic perspective. That and partnering physical activity, which we're going to talk
Yeah.
about in a little while. But um, but I would in the morning sometimes skip breakfast, sometimes eat, whatever was, leftovers.
Mhm.
And now I'm a lot more conscious about it, and I do eat eggs. We have chickens in the backyard that make fresh
Nice.
every day. Um,
Nice.
and I like to put a little bit of meat with it, something if there's
Mhm.
any leftovers, in the
Me
fridge
too.
few too many days, and it's like, "Okay, time to do something with this." I'll just add that, and I do the same with the vegetables. If there's any green beans or broccoli or spinach, and so I get that fiber in the morning and just make like a
Nice.
little scramble. Quick, nothing fancy. I'm
Yeah,
not,
yeah,
you know, I'm not putting it on Instagram, all right, folks, but
yeah.
it's absolutely, it makes me feel so much better, and I don't get hungry in
Mhm,
the evening. I
mhm.
can go away to lunch and not be distracted by a food urge, so
Yeah, yeah.
okay, Andy has a question or a comment. Says, "My cardiologist said to cut sugar and eat only European bread. In the real world, what kind of bread can I eat? Also, how can I measure or monitor my metabolic health?" Good questions, Andy.
Yeah, good questions. I mean, eat only European bread. I'm not sure exactly what that means. Does sourdough qualify? Sourdough for some people can be lower glycemic. For me, it's not. Um, for my husband, it is. So that's something that's good to test with a biosensor. Um, Also, when you do choose to eat bread, make sure you've got fat, fiber, and protein with it. So, the only way I can eat a slice of sourdough and get a level glucose response is with avocado, an egg, and some salmon. So, really load it up with fat, fiber, and protein. Um, what kind of bread? So,
Yeah, what about like whole wheat or high fiber breads? Does that help?
Um, I find that most whole wheat are not a whole lot better than refined wheat. I think you just have to test for yourself. There's some sprouted wheat breads that typically behave better for some people. but that's something that people really have to kind of try for themselves.
Yeah, for sure. I've noticed, I mean, I can commiserate with Andy because when I go to France to visit my
Yeah.
family, I feel like even though I eat very differently,
Mhm.
better, I lose weight, I have
Yeah.
less inflammation. It may have to do with that I'm on vacation too, right? You know.
Yeah, and maybe you're walking more.
Exactly, like, it's a
Yeah.
total change of my
Mhm.
behavior, and
Mhm.
even though it's familiar to me now, I don't replicate it very much back at home when I get
Yeah.
back. But I do think with foods, one of the things with breads that I noticed, especially
Mhm.
store-bought breads,
Mhm.
is that a lot of them have added sugar.
Yeah. Yeah.
A surprising amount, you know,
Yeah.
some of maybe a gram of sugar per slice, but I've seen 5, 6, 7 grams of sugar
Yeah.
in a serving, and that's probably, you know, one of the reasons why if I would have a glycemic response, it would be because of that extra, you know,
Added.
basically that extra carbohydrate.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
don't think that's the case as much in most European baking. They
Mhm.
add some sugar, to some recipes, but for the most part, it's really not part of the equation when they're baking fresh bread. So I don't know. I have a local baker that I love, that makes, you know, that's natural yeast. It's not you know, it's not, manufactured yeast, and it's also, um, there's no sugar added.
Mhm.
And, you know, these amazing ciabatta loaves and European style loaves, and I don't eat a lot of bread, quite
Mhm.
honestly. I don't have a lot of data on my own, but I would suspect, Andy, that that might be one of the things that's causing the spikes is the added
Mhm.
sugar. Look on the
Added
label.
sugar. And I think a lot of bread is not truly fermented. I think the fermentation process uses the sugars, and so I think that's why some people get a better glucose response with truly fermented bread.
So another thing that I wanted to talk about, I mean, we talked a little bit about bread and pasta. These are the things that, you know, are the obvious ones. When I wore the CGM, I would get a spike.
Mhm.
But some of the things that surprised me, we in our house eat salad at the end of the meal, which
Ah.
is not is much more common in France to do that. Um, but that vinegar in the salad, I had learned
Mhm.
could help benefit,
Mhm.
specifically cider vinegar.
Mhm.
You know, I wrote about this. I did see a response on the graph when I would take
Mhm.
cider vinegar, but could you talk a little bit about that? What's your experience? Is apple cider vinegar like an elixir that's going to save us all? What I mean, I feel like
Well,
people
I mean, it certainly helps with digestion. There is good evidence of that. When I was working with levels, they did an experiment with apple cider vinegar. And what they found was that the people whose blood sugar response was helped the most with a dose of apple cider vinegar were the people that were the most insulin resistant. So the people that were more metabolically healthy, the apple cider vinegar didn't seem to make much of a difference. But for people who are more insulin resistant, more have more metabolic health issues, it seemed to be a good thing.
and how do you use it? Like, do you take it before you eat? Do you take it with it?
Before you eat, exactly, like 15 minutes before you eat, a tablespoon in a glass of water.
Yeah, yeah, definitely don't do what I did and take a tablespoon without the water.
If
There's a
you I mean, if you can do that.
Yeah, your throat will thank you, believe me. I mean, you think about it at the time, but, no, and I did see that makes sense for me because I have a sensitivity or a, resistance to insulin, you know, that's kind of the path I'm headed down, and
Mm,
so, so I have when especially when I make, pasta at home or if, like, you know, a friend is making homemade pasta, we know we're gonna go over to their house and have
yeah,
I know what I'm about to eat,
uh-huh,
then I'll do it because it just kind of it
yeah,
saves it's good peace of mind. I feel less guilty, you know, going in for that helping of fresh pasta. But
yeah,
um the other thing I do with pasta now, rather than actual pasta, we use riced cauliflower. Um
mhm,
it's wife and I will saute up with some olive oil, some riced cauliflower, and make
nice,
the pasta for the kids. And then I
uh-huh,
just put the sauce on top of the riced cauliflower. And the key is, I know some people are like, okay, riced cauliflower is so 2023, but the key to riced cauliflower in my house, where it makes it edible, is to get it browned. You really
Uh-huh,
have to
uh-huh,
brown.
not soggy.
Yeah, and normally you get it frozen. I mean, I don't know how many people are ricing their cauliflower, from
Mhm,
scratch. But, if it's frozen, you need that piping hot pan and you need a big pan so that you
mhm,
can spread
mhm,
it out and it doesn't just steam and sweat. And then
mhm,
salt it. Like, it's okay to salt it. A lot
mhm,
of just gonna use it straight out of the packaging, and then they're disappointed. And
mhm.
it's so much better if I just doctor it up a little bit with, with some olive oil, some salt, and make sure I get some color on it.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
We
one
do
of
that when we order out, Indian food. We do our rice cauliflower and add a little curry in there.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm
yeah,
sure you could do it with Asian all kinds of Asian foods where you normally have that basmati or jasmine rice, like,
yeah,
you know,
exactly.
or brown rice. I mean, how did this brown rice affect you from a glycemic index?
No different than white rice.
Yeah.
I get huge blood sugar spikes from rice.
Yeah, rice is like a no-go for me too.
Yeah.
I used to eat it as a child all the time. I kind of
Oh,
actually found it's interesting. I found that I started, um, avoiding foods subconsciously, I think, as
mm,
I got older that
huh,
did help me.
yeah,
I ate my weight in fruit every day when I was a kid.
yeah,
Um, I don't eat fruit much at all anymore. I mean, I
huh,
certainly eat it every day. I eat a lot of vegetables,
yeah,
but then also rice. When I was a kid, I lived in Guam for a little while, and
mhm,
my mom's cooking was influenced by that, I think, and so we had a lot of Asian foods and certainly a lot of sticky rice, and so I ate that, like, after school, I ate it when I was sick, I ate it,
mhm,
4 times a week sometimes. We don't eat that much rice anymore.
yeah, yeah,
I don't know, I mean, it wasn't a conscious decision, but it just kind of slowly worked its way out of.
because you feel better eating that way? Yeah,
I think when I wore the CGM,
mhm,
started to I started to, relate physical feelings that I just basically ignored. Uh,
mhm,
I started to relate those to the glycemic change, and so
mhm, mhm,
especially I get after a good meal, I get a good sweat on, like like, I'm enjoying my meal when I'm sweating afterwards, and that's totally a glycemic
yeah,
response
yeah,
because I would have elevated blood sugar, and it's often a side effect. So, I'm sure if I had checked my blood sugar years ago, it would
uh-huh,
be high, and with the CGM, it showed me that, sure enough. So yeah, I mean, it's not me working off my meal. It's actually my body
yeah,
to try to
that's
turn.
new information, yeah,
Okay, there's a couple more here. Let's see. Dr. Morella says Europe has non-GMO gluten and they are very restrictive with their food additives. So I
yeah,
think to the European breads,
right,
there's definitely a difference, and
mhm.
there's a lot of debate about what that difference is and what's really causing the benefits. But I don't know. Have you had any experience with GMO free gluten versus GMO gluten?
Oh,
Have you-
I mean, I when we were in where was it? Spain a couple of years ago, I did eat the bread and I didn't sometimes I get a stomachache here in the States from bread, and so I largely avoid it. But I wanted to try it because I'd heard people say, "Oh, it's so much better." So I did not experience the stomachache, but I definitely still got a glucose spike.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, gluten in general, an inflammation marker, right? And,
Mhm.
uh,
Mhm.
I haven't I wouldn't know, unfortunately, I didn't wear the CGM when I was in Europe. I'd be interested
Mhm.
that maybe, this fall when I go back,
Yeah.
uh, to help my aunt pick the olives. But Patty has a question too about fermented foods, and she says, "I find it interesting that so many sites on Substack say to eat fermented foods like kimchi. I find
Mhm.
it causes hives for me, and
Mm.
a few hours later. But I also read that fermented foods cause high inflammation in the body. So that's a good question about fermentation. How does that
Yeah, I mean, for most people, fermented foods are really good. They provide good bacteria for the gut. Um, it's a good way to get those good bacteria. If it causes hives for her, it's likely a histamine reaction, and she should avoid them, obviously. But
Yeah.
for most people, they're a good thing. And most cultures eat some sort of fermented food with their meals.
And speaking of fermented, that was the other interesting learning from the CGM was alcohol. You know,
Mm,
I really was curious if alcohol was one of the root causes of my glycemic issues because there's a lot of sugar
mhm,
in alcohols, and so when I wore it, at the time I was actually still running the brewery, so
mhm,
and that had been a relatively recent transition for me. I'd always enjoyed home brewing and fermentation in general, but during COVID, I ended up working with a really close friend of mine to help him reopen his brewery that had
yeah,
closed for COVID. And it meant that I was drinking a lot more beer than I normally do. I'm much more of a wine guy or maybe a bourbon guy.
yeah,
But I found that beer, especially, was a huge spike to my blood sugar.
yeah,
However, wine, not as much or minimal, and spirits, nothing at all. So
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
curious what you'd say to that.
Well, I mean, the carb content in beer is likely the culprit there. But with any alcohol, your body's gonna prioritize, um, dealing with the alcohol first. Your liver's gonna say, "Oh, let's deal with this alcohol." And then that's why drinking too close to bedtime, you know, not giving yourself enough time to metabolize is gonna be detrimental because you're gonna deal with the alcohol first, and then your body will deal with the carbs or whatever you've eaten later, and then that's likely gonna wake you up.
Yeah, no, that's definitely the experience I had.
Yeah,
Glad you mentioned timing, like
yeah.
when you eat,
Mhm,
and also when do you do physical activity? Because that was a huge learning for me was obviously to eat earlier,
mhm,
and,
mhm,
but also to do a little bit of moving right after a meal,
mhm.
and that helped
Yeah.
flatten things out.
If
Would
you
you
can
use?
move after every meal, that's ideal. If that's not possible, moving after your biggest meal is a good idea. And it doesn't have to be a lot, even a 10 to 15-minute walk or air squats or dancing in the kitchen after dinner or whatever it might be is definitely beneficial.
Yeah, I will eat my biggest meal of the day is dinner, and we
Yeah.
tend to eat it late for American standards, early
Mhm.
for we're at the table around 7.
Yeah.
Uh, but, by the time we do dishes and everything, it could be 8:30,
Yeah.
8:45. And so I am a late night walker. I have
Yeah.
always been. And again, maybe that was my body telling me what it
Mhm.
needed,
Uh-huh.
but I try to do it earlier, in the evening, and if I can, uh,
Mhm.
reduce those desserts or
Mhm.
night naps, after 8 o'clock. I go to bed about 10. So
Yeah.
I don't know, it for everybody, it's different, I'm sure, but
Mhm.
really helped me.
Yeah. I mean,
So
ideally, you wanna finish your last meal 3 hours before bed. Gives your body plenty of time to rest and digest and go to bed, you know, not still actively digesting. That's the ultimate.
so do you have kind of like a general recommendation for everyone if they're thinking about this information, thinking about trying a CGM, or they've gotten, some news from their doctor that they're creeping up,
Mm.
in terms of their blood sugar? Like what can we do? What are the basics that we can do to kind of right the ship?
What are the basics? I would say prioritize protein at breakfast is huge for a lot of people. A lot of people don't eat protein at breakfast time. Breakfast time is traditionally a pastry or frappuccino or juice and toast or very protein light. So that is huge for most people. Starting to prioritize protein at breakfast. Movement after meals. if you don't have a program for strength training, starting to build muscle. Muscle is your glucose sponge. So building muscle at any age, whether that's, you know, if you've got to start by just walking, that's going to be beneficial. If you can add body weight, if you can add heavy weights, whatever it is, whatever you have access to, building muscle is huge for reducing, for improving insulin sensitivity. Yeah, and I would say sleep, working on sleep is
Mhm.
is a big one.
How
You know,
much sleep you get?
uh, I'm sorry?
How much sleep should we get?
How much sleep? Well, I think it varies by the person. I think at least 7 hours. Um, if you can do 8, you know, even better. But, there've been studies that show that, with a good night's sleep, you have a 30% decrease in, glucose reaction. So 30% lower glucose than when you have a poor night's sleep.
Wow. Yeah, no, I think as we get older, or at least as I get older, sleep becomes more and more
Yeah.
a priority for sure, and just being more consistent with my sleep
Mhm.
because
Yeah. A more
I
bedtime. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Now we're in the summertime and everybody's going traveling around, and I loved you did a Substack note not too long ago about some tips for how do
Mhm.
we stick to our program or our regimen, or now that you've given all these great tips, how do we find a way to manage that while we're traveling, visiting family, going to fun tropical locations? Like what do you do to keep on your program?
Yeah, I try to wake up with the sun every day, get some morning sunlight, helps set my circadian rhythm for the whole day. I don't get on my phone for the first 30 to 60 minutes, no screens. So my nervous system can have a gentle start to the day. Um, I always start with a matcha,
Mm, okay.
something I enjoy. Um, And then I try for, 7,500 to 10,000 steps a day wherever I am. Um, and if I'm away from, at home, I do strength training 3 times a week. So if I'm away from a gym, I'll do a program of body weight exercises. Um,
Is that like push-ups and squats? Like what would you do?
yeah, well, I'm actually loving this. It's called the Capable Method, and so it's not traditional push-ups and squats. It's a lot of body weight, um, RDLs, and I don't know what you call them all, but it's a great program. So I've been doing that since I've been at No Carb with
But
my
you don't need any equipment, you're just kind of using.
not spending equipment, which I love about it. Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, Again, for me, the gym is not my favorite place.
Yeah.
Love doing physical activity,
Yes.
and back in the day, I could play basketball or, and now I do a lot of hiking, but I've found that, I've always hiked my whole life, but it's not enough for strength training, strength.
Right. It's not
Yeah.
enough. I mean, I love hiking, I love paddleboarding, I love all of that, but it's the work that I do in the gym lifting heavy that enables me to still ski and to still paddleboard and carry my own paddleboard, and yeah, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So, if you can go out in the backyard and, pick up heavy things too,
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
but don't crouch back because,
Right. Right.
I've been there too.
Yeah.
Well, when I wrote the articles on, Worlds Colliding, one of the things I talked to this fantastic endocrinologist, Dr. Fran Kaufman, who's kind of one of the leading experts in type 1 diabetes, but also
Mhm.
in type 2, she works with a lot of disadvantaged communities. And she gave me this term that I'd never heard called the worried well.
Mm.
Have you heard of that term?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and in this concept, I mean, my definition was basically, people who have means and have access to healthcare, and it
Mhm.
creates this kind of, you know, anxiety. Am I okay, and then they go and use the technology, or they go and get access to the doctors, and the people who are really sick with type 2 or type 1 diabetes then don't have access. I
Mm,
was wondering what you thought about the worried well, and if that's how you define it, and then also, what do you feel about who should be using these technologies? Should we
mm,
have a
mhm.
or or only the people who are diagnosed with a condition?
No, I think, like I said, I wish insurance companies would pay for everyone to wear one for a month a year. I think information is valuable. I mean, I wear my Oura Ring. I like the data. I don't it doesn't stress me out. Uh, if you're a person that stresses out over the data or the details, or you have a history of an eating disorder, you probably shouldn't use that kind of thing. But for, I think, the majority of people, it's really valuable insight and information into what your body is telling you. I think it just amplifies and clarifies what your body is telling you. And a lot of people don't connect feelings to what's actually happening. And so I think wearables do that really well.
I found it immensely
Mhm,
educational, and
mhm,
not only just to kind of put me at ease, but to help me
mhm,
change my lifestyle. So,
mhm.
again, the good news is that I have dropped a little bit in my average glucose,
Good.
and I feel like, that trend was that's a big change from what
Mhm,
was
mhm,
steady and slow, but
mhm.
that's how these diseases and illnesses creep up on us, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Time, not some big chronic or some big moment. It's not a catastrophe. It's a slow, steady burn.
The slow, steady progression,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. Well, I have to admit, I did go looking for some magic, to
Yeah.
solve my situation. Once I got the data, I was like,
Mhm,
okay, yeah, diet and exercise, but is there anything else out there that might help?
mhm,
Supplements, the apple cider vinegar,
mhm.
walking to an extent is absolutely a magic help.
Yeah.
Um, but I did also explore, a medicinal mushroom from
Mhm,
the north of the world, in the Arctic, called chaga. And
mhm,
I've been writing about mushrooms, foraging mushrooms for years now, and yeah, you can catch a ton of content on my podcast and in the archive, with some of the best experts like Pascal Baudard and, Brando Farr here in Southern California. But this gentleman in Alaska Chaga, and I'm not a sponsor or anything,
mhm.
he basically has been harvesting this mushroom that lives on birch trees, and historically has been known as an anti, cancer.
Mm,
It's in communities in Finland and Russia, and, actually have like really low that use this in ceremonial or in traditional cooking, have very low, rates of cancer.
mm.
And there's been clinical studies. I think even in Japan, they use it as first line therapy for oncology.
Wow.
So as a tea, basically. But it also has a warning by the FDA, that if you use it while you're on diabetes medication, it can actually cause hypoglycemia because
Huh.
it can lower your blood sugar.
Wow.
I was like, "Okay, I gotta try this." I actually did and wrote about it in the piece, and I had some, modest improvement, and I think the reason why I bring it up is not as a something that's going to save you, um, but just again to remind folks that food is medicine, and that
Mhm.
that all of these things that we do have an impact on us, sometimes positive, sometimes negative. Are there any shortcuts that you've come across that you could share with us?
Oh gosh. Um, I just think there is no one magic bullet. I think, protein, fiber, sleep, and movement are the main things, as boring as that sounds. I know there's good evidence for magnesium if but it's uh usually in someone who is magnesium deficient. So, berberine.
Yeah,
Um,
it is berberine.
so it is similar to similar to metformin. But again, I would advise people to check with their doctor if they're using that in a to lower their blood sugar. I would advise people to check with their doctor first. Um,
Absolutely. Yeah, the same with the chaga, not
mhm,
only for the potential impact it could have if
mhm,
you know,
mhm,
diabetes medication, but also if you take too much of it, just like any
mhm.
good thing, it can actually cause kidney stones.
Yeah, yeah,
Not life-threatening, but really painful.
yeah.
So you wanna be careful. Anything with these high antioxidants or
Mhm,
tannins in them,
yeah.
really cause some interesting, problems. But also, I think it's important to say, and we didn't say this at the outset, all of this is our own personal exploration, and
Mhm, mhm.
you need to talk to a healthcare provider.
Yeah, this is not medical advice.
Yeah. Went to the doctor first before I did any of this, and I kept my doctor, informed the whole way, even though there were some eye rolls, and some
Yeah,
questions. Um, oh, and actually, we've got a question. What
okay.
was the name of your exercises that you
Oh,
recommend?
so the one I do when I'm traveling is called the Capable Method, and
Okay.
she has a lot of free, um, exercises on YouTube, but I do pay for the monthly, because I like the variety. Yeah.
And you used an acronym too to talk about one of the exercises. Was it it was RTG or
Oh, J Romanian deadlifts, RDL.
RDL,
Yeah,
Romanian dance. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
that's
I'll do them with weight in the gym, but she has a method of doing them with body weight that I like. So,
fantastic.
yeah.
Fantastic. Well, I have one final question, and I'm gonna ask it because I want everybody else, if they have a final question, to throw it in there because we only have a few minutes left. But you know, imagine the folks on the live today, you know, forget 90% of what we just talked about.
Yeah.
What is the one thing that you hope that they remember about maintaining metabolic health?
Start your day with protein, if I can only pick one.
I can agree with that. And as a
Okay.
teacher, I think that's great. That I do that in spades. But
Yeah.
yeah, and so you mentioned it can be dairy, it could be meat,
Eggs,
eggs.
dinner leftovers. Um, yeah, I like all of the above.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I can't disagree. It really has changed how I've, um just how I even respond in the morning to my body because I feel like I don't have that anxiety, like, I'd be, like, itching for, it's almost like having too much coffee in the morning, with
Mhm.
a lot of carbohydrate,
Yeah, yeah,
and,
the jittery. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Well, awesome. Well, I realized that my CGM wasn't just measuring my glucose, it was
Mhm,
measuring my attention. It was
mhm,
measuring my awareness.
mhm,
That was the biggest thing for me was if there's anything I can recommend, it's, find a tool like that or a
mhm,
practice or a purpose that just gets you thinking more about your body in the moment.
mhm,
Like, we're so distracted by 100 million different things, and we're in our
mhm.
mind all the time. And if I think of the medicine wheel as a balance, you've got mind and spirit, which I think a lot of people focus on, and
Yeah.
many people focus on it in terms of like, how can I make it look nicer or get
Mhm,
stronger? But that heart and body centric approach in the morning and
mhm.
really thinking about those two components is
Yeah.
what's changed for me and how CGM helped me. And so, but I'm so glad that you got to come on today, Beth. That we could have talked for another hour on
I
this,
know, I know.
but I hope you come back on again soon. And thank you again for sharing all your tips. And this will be going out, everybody, as a recording. So if you missed it or came in late, don't worry. And I'll be sending out in the newsletter on Saturday the next installment of Live. And Beth, how can we find you?
So, you can find me on Substack. You can find me on my website. The website is nest-wellness.com. Substack is Nest Wellness. Those are the 2 main places. Instagram. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, I definitely encourage everybody to check out all of Beth's content. It is a wealth of knowledge and lots of great recipes too. So, thanks everybody for coming in, and it's been a great session. Lots of great questions, and we'll see you next time.
All right. Thanks for having me.